I've been on the Cartoon Amino for a while now, and it's probably one of the greatest social media platforms I've ever used, in my opinion. I've been taking art and animation classes for a couple of years now, so I've been lucky to be surrounded by people in real life with common interest. A lot of people that like cartoons, comics, anime, manga, video games, cosplay, etc. But to have a whole community online where different types of people from all over the world can communicate through an entire app dedicated to the cartoon medium is just amazing to me. There's so many people on here. With that being said, I don't particularly know what kids are into these days. I mean, I am 18 years old, and of course I tend to want to socialize with people around my age or slightly older, but occasionally I'll pop in on public chat rooms where there's usually both kids and adults, and I'll just see what's up. While this doesn't apply to all kids, I'm beginning to notice that more and more younger people, usually around 14 or 13 and under, don't really have the same perspective of animation that I did when I was their age. And while I think that's completely fine, I'm not some cranky old man who's living in the past, I do think it's very interesting. I've met younger generations who absolutely hate comedy shows like the older episodes of SpongeBob, Rocko's Modern Life, the older episodes of The Simpsons, etc. You know, the stuff that I used to love. I've met younger generations who love stuff like the Emoji Movie, Big Mouth, Teen Titans Go, etc. Stuff I very much dislike. And I've met some younger generations that tend to prefer action shows like Adventure Time and Gravity Falls, which are indeed shows I enjoy too, but they still dislike cartoons from the 90s and early 2000s that I grew up with. When I was around 13 or 14, I loved Adventure Time, Regular Show, Gravity Falls, Gumball, etc., but I was willing to appreciate what older cartoons did too. Sure, Hanna-Barbera, 90s Nicktoons, older Cartoon Network shows, and even a lot of adult cartoons have an entirely different atmosphere compared to what other shows from today are doing, but I understood what these shows impacted in animation as a whole. The original Looney Tunes and Disney cartoons, Hanna-Barbera cartoons, and late 80s to 90s cartoons like The Simpsons completely revolutionized animation. When I was younger, I was able to understand that, and because of how popular cartoon criticism was getting at the time, like the works of the mysterious Mr. Enter, I was able to understand why the quality of these shows and movies were entertaining to people. And this of course all correlates to time periods. For some kids, Big Mouth is probably one of the first adult cartoons they've watched, so seeing this wannabe edgy content satisfies them and is really refreshing for them to see for the first time. For some kids, maybe they didn't grow up with Legos, maybe they grew up on their phones, so the Emoji Movie might have been a really bizarre, interesting trip for them. For some kids, the Dark Age episodes of SpongeBob and the modern episodes of The Fairly OddParents were their first introduction to the show, and after watching more action-heavy content or adult animated comedies, these shows may not hold up to them. So maybe that's why they view them as overrated catastrophes. Maybe they grew up with shows like Gravity Falls and Steven Universe, which by the way also revolutionized animation, don't get me wrong, but they grew up with those shows so much that they can't seem to grasp the thought of living in a world where shows like that didn't exist. They're also living in a time period where in-depth criticism like the works of Mr. Enter, Pie Guy Rules, or even Nostalgia Critic aren't really as popular as they used to be. So their opinion on whether they like or dislike something isn't really relied on cognitive critical thinking. Cartoons are developing over time in different ways, they're evolving, and that changes a child's perspective on a show that came out today, compared to one that came out 10 to 100 years ago. In the end, it's all just opinion. And opinions are entirely subjective no matter how old you are.